Hello, everybody. You're very welcome back to the Seeking Play podcast. My name is Dr. Jane Hession.
My name is Ronan Healy.
I would also like to remind you that you can be a listener and a viewer as our conversations are available on YouTube and Spotify.
Now, this week we were delighted to have Dr. Lynda Shaw join us as a guest. Lynda has a doctorate in cognitive neuroscience, specializing in the unconscious processing of emotions and behavioral change. Lynda also studied psychology and social anthropology in her undergraduate. Lynda has multiple academic papers written and is the author of two books, one more aimed at adults called Your Brain is Boss, and the other one aimed towards kids, which is called Beat the Bullies, Use Your Brain. As founder of Brain and Behavior, Lynda has worked with senior leaders in their teams who want to better understand the science of human behavior and development. And Lynda, in all of her work and videos, she's also been on a TEDx talk. Curiosity and creativity really comes through in the conversations with Lynda. And we certainly thought Lynda would be a wonderful guest in relation to Seeking Play, as they're attributes of play: curiosity and creativity.
So after watching Lynda's interview, Ronan and I identified 3 quotes that we would like to share with our listeners. So the first quote: adult playfulness is about showing a more vulnerable side, so it gives others permission to do the same. Lynda also said we need to open people's focus through playfulness, creativity, and a sense of calm. This is where we are working at our best.
And the final quote we really enjoyed was, not taking yourself too seriously is key in life. Lighten up, as things will get better if you put your brain in a pleasurable state. Now, having looked back a number of times on the conversation with Lynda, I think we agreed on 3 words that we could associate with our chat with Lynda. It was informative, practical, and fun. And we've certainly enjoyed it, and we hope you will too.
Take care. Many thanks. Thank you. Bye.
Bye, folks.
Lynda, you are very welcome this morning to the Seeking Play podcast. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for inviting me.
You're very, very welcome. We're really, really excited to get started. Lynda, I am going to take you back to your childhood. I would like you to share with our listeners, what were you like as a kid?
Oh, annoyingly curious, really. Mm-hmm. Really annoyingly curious. I would seek out older people. Everyone was older than me. I was really small at the time. And I would seek out the very, very older people, the very elderly people. And I would sit and ask them, what was it like when you were little? Why do you do that? Why did you think that? What happened? Why? All the time. I was a sponge for information from the elderly. I used to sit with them for hours, just listening to them, because those lovely old faces, and I'm getting one now, but never mind. But those lovely old faces that just light up when they're talking about such amazing things that they've done. It's a font of learning. So I was extremely annoying to anybody, but the elderly people liked it because they felt significant. And if you can help somebody feel significant and important and listen to, that's a very big gift. And I learned that, and I did it automatically and naturally as a child, but now of course I understand it very much. And so listening to people is the big thing. And my driver was always, why do people do what they do? Mm-hmm. And I've even got a friend now who was in my senior school with me from the age of 11. She was my closest buddy then, and she still is. And she used to say, you're always odd. You never fitted in. You were always odd. Thanks, Joe. But I think I was a bit odd because I didn't fit in. I didn't fit in with the others in the playground or anything. I was a bit different. I don't even know why, but I didn't mind that. Didn't mind it at all. But it's just quite interesting to look back. So I've actually all the time been driven to understand why people do what they do.
Cool. And Lynda, if you can cast your mind back, are there any bumps, breaks, scars, bruises, or childhood adventures that tell an interesting story of how you think that childhood experience contributed to your sense of identity as an adult?
As a child, I think because I didn't fit in very easily, I that enabled me to become even more independent and think a lot. I'm a great thinker, and I have oodles of ideas every single day, the majority of which come to absolutely nothing. So I think that informed me in terms of not fitting in with them. At times, of course, that hurt a bit. I mean, I had friends, but not close friends. And even now I've noticed that my friendship group, I've got some really smashing friends, but they're all very different from one another. I don't even know why that happens to me, but it just does. But I think what informed me most is that because I love to find out why people do what they do as a child, I took that to other countries as I was getting older, as teenager and onwards. So I've been to some crazy places doing crazy things. I've even kayaked around the icebergs in Antarctica. I've climbed mountain ranges, and I've been to all the continents. I've done some crazy stuff. And then that transposed into me dragging my children to do this crazy stuff. And they were kicking and screaming, going, I want to go on an ordinary holiday. Going, CV, I would be dragging them because I wanted to get amongst the local people.
Yes.
Even if there was a language barrier, it didn't matter, because I could just watch and observe and realize that we're all exactly the same. And that is that. So that child personality I had has developed more and more and more, and I've taken it cross-culturally, and it's informed my work to this day.
Wow.
Cool. So you were always so inquisitive, even as a child, and obviously you brought that through your adolescence and your adult life.
I do drive my family crazy. I say things like, I've had an idea. They go, oh no. Thinking, oh no. I think, oh, okay, yeah.
I can relate to that.
There you go.
An ideas engine, but
yes.
Not to say that they're all good.
It's fantastic to keep your mind working on a daily basis, whether they come to fruition or not, right? You're keeping your mind busy. I'm going to bring you to adulthood, and I am going to ask you, what would adult playfulness mean to you now, Lynda?
Adult playfulness, it means to me, if I am working with others, or indeed with others, I want them, I naturally draw out their playfulness in them. If you're asking me what does playfulness mean to me personally, then I'm just a little bit naughty. I just push a little bit, and I by default make people laugh, and I haven't got a clue how I do it. So the playfulness to me is not acting the fool, showing more of a vulnerable side of me, and having fun with it, not minding about that. And that gives permission to other people to do the same thing. And that's when people become even more creative, because they let their guard down and they go more into a growth mindset. So the playfulness can be anything. It tends to be physical. I'm a very physical person, so I don't want to make people feel embarrassed or anything like that. But I will certainly get people up and moving, or walking, or doing things where they are engaging more in their fresh air or whatever. Anything suits the person. So if somebody is in a wheelchair, one has to be careful. If somebody has special needs, one has to be careful. We have to be very, very considerate with play, and mindful of what people are able to do and willing to do and want to do. But I will follow their lead as well, and do whatever they choose. I think that's a very fair comment.
Yeah, lovely.
Yeah, definitely.
And how do you balance taking your work seriously, but also not taking it too seriously?
I don't take myself seriously. I think that's the key. My work is very serious. So first of all, I don't take myself seriously. I know I'm old enough and ugly enough to realize that, I have not got the answer to nuclear disarmament. I have not got the answer to all cancers. I haven't got those answers. So I do not take myself too seriously. However, not taking my work too seriously is difficult when I am working with somebody with depression, or with Alzheimer's disease, or the relatives of those people. It is difficult. Mostly my work is in the corporate world and in SMEs, so I tend not to be involved in that too much these days. Having said that, there's plenty of depression and anxiety disorder in the workforce, so one has to take that extremely seriously. But if I'm delivering my work in a very serious way, compound that problem, I create an environment where it pulls people down. So I don't do that. I acknowledge, and I am kind always, but I also somehow see irony somewhere to make them smile, or just to lighten things up a bit. So yeah, my work is serious, but I try not to make it too serious for a very good reason.
Yeah, I think that's a lovely distinction as well, is that essentially you are not your work. I mean, you're very close to it, and you can take your role or the work that you do very serious, but ultimately there is a difference. And I think a lot of people find it difficult to kind of see the difference between the work I do and the role I have, and also who I am, because they're very close. But yet, I think that stepping outside and having that sense of distance creates a greater capacity to involve other people in the work that you do, and create greater change. So that's lovely for you to say that.
It also is empowering, because one is calmer. And if you're calmer, you are therefore not putting yourself in an anxious state, and you are thinking clearly, and you are thinking about them. When I'm working with my clients, it's not about me, it's about them. I therefore, if I'm not being drawn into the darker side of things, and I can lighten them up a little bit, and then we can come to some kind of conclusions. For instance, if you have somebody in the workforce who is on sick leave because of clinical depression, how do you get them back into the workforce? How do you get them back in the workforce that it is not upsetting those who are working with them? Because they're going to feel as if they're going to be treading on eggshells, because they don't want to upset them. They're trying to be kind too. So we have to navigate that, and there are ways of doing it that are not too serious, and you're not expecting everyone else to be a pseudopsychologist, because that's wrong as well. And so it's empowering people to be calmer, so they're thinking clearer. That's just an example.
Lovely.
Lynda, I'm going to take you back to your earlier career. So when you were first starting out your career, what advice would you give to your younger self, either about being more serious or more playful in the way that you thought or interacted with other people?
What would I be saying to my younger self? Stop taking it so seriously. Just stop taking it so seriously. The things that you worried about in your youth matter not now. They're just crazy things we're worried about. Of course, there are plenty of people who've got some very serious things happening to them in their younger lives, but it's not taking ourselves too seriously, as I think is one of the big keys. And just lighten up, have some fun, because things do get better if you put the brain in a pleasurable state.
Yeah, that's so true. And how did you become interested in your field of research?
Well, when I was 14, I was, or since I was 14, I've been reading about consciousness. It's like the final frontier. It's like this amazing topic that is infuriatingly complex. And I've been reading about that forever. So when I went to university as a mature student for my first degree, and then I did my second degree, and my supervisor for my master's, it turned out he was a neurophysicist of vision, brilliant brain, and he's a Cambridge graduate, absolutely brilliant brain. And I looked at his biography on the university website, and there's this long list of all these things that he's absolutely brilliant at, and at the very bottom was consciousness. I went, oh, I'm so excited. And I went up to Michael and I said, Michael, I'm doing my master's with you, but I see that you actually have an interest in consciousness. And when this man has an interest in something, trust me, he would become an expert very quickly. So I just like, please, would you supervise me for a PhD in consciousness? And he said yes. So that's when my topic was unconscious processing of emotion using fMRI scanning equipment and behavioral studies, and that's how I got my doctorate. So that is a sort of pathway. So the consciousness thing, again, isn't it interesting how you look back to your youth? Because the three topics at school I was good at was biology, English, and economics in business. So, and I'm doing them now. I'm actually doing them now, and it's really interesting when you look back and you think, well, yeah, something was already, the seed was planted. Then consciousness I was reading about throughout those years, and then there you go, I got my doctorate.
I think that's an insight that comes up sometimes post conversation, post recording for some of our guests. They'll say, you know what, I haven't really reflected on my youth and how my experience has, in a way created my identity and my interests. So yeah, lovely for you to say that as well. Yeah, and I suppose we often wonder why don't adults reflect on youth? It seems to be like that's just, we parked that, we were young and we did the play stuff, but now it's into serious work. And I think there's always a thread in everything you do. And I think honoring your youth and honoring your experience is an important thing adults need to do more of.
I think that one of the issues we may have is that we relegate our playfulness and childhood to being not important. And we elevate our capacity for seriousness to be very important. And I think it's the other way around.
Agreed. I just got goosebumps. Yeah, definitely agree. On a visceral level, I agree with that.
So can I ask you then, obviously after your PhD, how did your career then evolve over time? Because you've had a stellar career from obviously speaking, working with SMEs, TED Talks, TV. We saw you on TV with Karen Brady. So you've had a fantastic career. So could you talk to us about how it evolved over time?
Well, when you have a PhD, and I know you have a PhD,
yes.
When you have a PhD, it's an academic qualification, and it doesn't easily translate into the commercial world. And it's a challenge, as you may have found, or I'm not sure, but you may have found out the same thing. So my background before I went to university as a mature student is I owned 3 businesses. So my natural feel was to go back into the business world. I tried lecturing, which I loved, but it didn't sit with me. It didn't make me as happy as I thought it would. And I still do guest lecturing to this day. I did a module the end of last year on sports psychology for master's students. So it's something I love with the students, but what I really get into is business, because economically, if the country is stable economically, then the other things should fall into place better. If a country is not strong economically, then it's going to be very hard for poverty, for famine, for all of these other reasons, the things that are going on around the world. So I'm into helping businesses thrive so that others thrive who work for them, and indeed the jobs are available. So I stepped back into the business world once I got my doctorate, and I finished with university world, and I did it all wrong. I really did. It was like I thought, oh my gosh, I've got doctorate in unconscious processing of emotion. I've got all this business experience. I'm going to tell the world all about how important emotion is in business, and I absolutely hit a brick wall. The brick wall, because I was getting feedback like, oh, we don't want to talk about that pink fluffy stuff, we want to make money or we want to save money. So I went away with my tail between my legs, and I tried to reinvent myself by talking about other things in the brain that I can talk about: language, memory, decision making, problem solving, all of creativity, all of those other things that we do cognitive. That worked a little bit better, but then people would say things like, oh, that Lynda, she talks about brain, what does she actually do? I thought, oh, this wasn't good either. So I did some years back now, worked with Standard Life, big pension providers here in the UK and worldwide. And they were studying what in their advertising galvanized people into action, into buying their products. And we used EEG scanning equipment, and the stimuli was a normal letter via the computer, a normal letter that you would get from an insurance provider, which was so boring. So boring. It was just pie charts, and luckily my husband reads this stuff, otherwise I'd be in trouble, but it was so boring. And then they did a letter where it was all about negative emotion, about survival, survival, or just negative sounding words in their emotion they were using, which was a first. And then there were positive words in the third letter, which was about saving for your family, which was about holidays, which was about grandchildren, all of those things. And without exception, it was the positive emotional words in the advertising for pensions that actually galvanized people to take their products or to buy their products. And I found that absolutely fascinating. And it was then that was the turning point, that all of a sudden businesses were taking emotion far more seriously. And of course, in advertising and PR, they've been doing this for years, but not in any other departments in the business world. And that was the change. So I now talk about emotion in business, and especially when it comes to business relationships. That's very important.
Very important, especially in obviously a post-COVID world, of course, as well. Definitely.
Yeah, and I think that again, it's something that is underappreciated. Again, I would say, you know, emotions and even engaging in the act of Lego serious play is certainly is starting to increase the way of change, by way of change. But I think people still don't appreciate that emotions are a value judgment. Like if you can add a positive emotion to something, we're subconsciously making a value judgment on this thing or on this product, service, or person. So it's not something you kind of sprinkle over it just to like have good copywriting. It's like there's a subconscious value-based judgment we're making on that particular thing. And yeah, like again, back to your point about like playfulness, positive affect and emotions are important to engage with the proper culture in the workplace, but also to sell products and services.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you follow the work of Lisa Feldman Barrett, of course, it's a case of emotions enable us to make sense of what's going on.
Yep.
So that is vital. It is vital. So if you are somebody who actually cannot use emotion to make any kind of evaluation on whatever's going on, then you're missing a very big chunk of the jigsaw puzzle, and you must be completely perplexed. Like people on the autistic spectrum, you know, it's very difficult if they're not reading emotional responses to actually know what to do next.
Just a slight aside, did you see the conversation between Lisa Feldman Barrett and Mark Soms? If not, it was like a...
I love Mark Soms. I was doing a poster presentation in Tucson, Arizona, in the Consciousness conference years ago, and Mark Soms was on stage with another professor he was on the side of Freud. We should revisit Freud. The other professor was going, absolutely no way. The debate was superb. Absolutely superb. And Mark Soames won the debate. He persuaded the audience we should revisit Freud. And that's going some for a neuroscientist to say that.
It is, yeah. And I think we'll link it to the show notes. Lisa Feldman Barrett and Mark Soms had a conversation a couple of weeks ago or months ago at this stage, but we'll link it to the show notes because it's a very different perspective on consciousness and the human brain and lots of different things. So we'll link that. But again, I suppose it's nice to see opposite ends of the spectrum engaging in productive conversation.
I'm sorry, Jane. I just really wish that we had more of that on media, because that encourages people to debate without taking it personally. And we're losing that because people are throwing their toys out of the pram on social media. And it's like, well, stop it. We can't silence people. We need to learn from one another, different perspectives. That is what will keep peace. So yeah, that's really good that you mentioned that. Well done.
I think you're next.
Me? Okay, yes.
Oh, yes.
Can you explain your work to a 5-year-old?
Oh, I play with brains. How do I explain it to a 5-year-old? Yeah, I play with brains. They're squodgy things. They like tofu. You press them. You can cut them with a blunt knife. In fact, I'm actually going to speak to a group of 4-year-olds, a group of 5-year-olds, and a group of 6-year-olds in 2 weeks' time. I'm petrified. Oh my goodness me, I've got to engage them for 45 minutes. But so I've written a children's book on Beat the Bullies, Use Your Brain, and it's written for a classroom. So it's that length of time. So it's about neuroscience and bullying. I would probably, if I was going to be talking to 5-year-olds, I would probably be talking about the character in my book who is called Herman Homunculus, and he's a little man who lives in the brain, and he helps us use our emotions well. He helps with Happy Honey. He helps with all of these different names I've come up with for angry Audrey, and all of these things. So so I would explain it like I work with Herman Homunculus to help your Herman Homunculus help you.
Fantastic. Again, links to the show notes. That will be there, of course.
Lynda, I am going to read an extract from your book, The Brain is Boss, and I would just like you to unpack it if you can. So, intuition is subliminal processing based on implicit knowledge. What is intuition, Lynda, and how can it help in the workplace?
Well, neuroscientifically, I think probably the biggest players are Klein and Kahneman. Klein, they're both professors of psychology. Klein is very much into believing that intuition is experiences that we have learned before and inform our decisions and our responses now. Kahneman is a bit different. He's more about it's not quite the same. However, the interesting thing is they both agree that it's pattern recognition. Now, if it's pattern recognition, it means that that comes from our experiences. That does come from our memory. So there is a very famous example that was on the UK television many years ago, and it's the examples in the book. And it was about a fire officer, senior fire officer, who there was a chemical fire in a building, and the team were in there. In those days, it was all men, so the team were all in there and fighting it. And all of a sudden, the senior outside was on the walkie-talkie microphone or whatever. They said, "Everybody out, get out now, get out." And the guys were going, "No, it's fine, we've got it under control." He said, "No, get out now." So they all ran out and did as they were told, and with that, the building exploded. And so the television program was about how come this guy saved the lives of all these men. And the psychologists were working, they were asking questions, they were doing all sorts of things. And it transpired that the senior fire officer, when he was a junior fire officer, was in the similar situation, and the smoke of the building that was about to explode behaved in a certain way. And he had stored that in his memory, way below conscious awareness, just didn't even realize he'd done it. And he tapped into that. Somehow he saw the smoke behaving in the way the second time and used his intuition, supposedly, to actually get everybody out of the building. And it worked. So what the specialists are saying in this topic, that the intuition is based upon our expertise. So if we are using intuition in the business world, and it's in our area of expertise and experience, then it's worth taking notice of. However, what they've agreed is that perhaps we need to be a little bit more careful if it's a novel situation where you have nothing and no experience to tap into, albeit below conscious awareness. So that is when you evaluate things a little bit more. So yeah, that is how psychologists and neuroscientists, well, that's one view of intuition, which I referred to in the book.
And
Yeah,
I think that relates to our view of, in the workplace, if you're denying or repressing a more playful self, again, not that it's all the time, but you're not fully in tune with your body or with a more primitive self, if you're thinking about Yak Pansep, and in doing so, intuition, we believe, and we'd love to hear your thoughts, or maybe not, you're not as intuitive as you could be if you have a felt sense that I'm free to express myself. And in doing so, the more subconscious aspect of your perception is elevated. If you feel you can be yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, you need to engage the parasympathetic nervous system, and it's about, rest and digest. You need to be calm but alert. That senior fire officer was calm and alert, and he realized something was happening, and he gave the order. Now, afterwards, the adrenaline may have been going, the cortisol may have been going in a highly stressful situation, but at that moment, he was calm and alert, which empowered him to tap into anything else, any other signals, any other stimuli, anything that's going on. He was able to open up his focus, because the trouble is, if we are stuck in our sympathetic nervous system with the blinkers on, if we're doing that, then we are focusing on the perceived threat. And if we're only focusing on the perceived threat and in a stressful way, we're ignoring all of this other stuff going on that could help us. So that is why when I go into any kind of boardroom and I'm talking to them about stress or there's conflict in the boardroom, you've got to get people relaxed with one another so that they can actually think creatively rather than the focus like, oh my God, I've got to do something. But if I just say I'm going to do it, I won't have to. And 2 days later, it won't be done. All of those things go on, but we need to open up people's focus by that playfulness, by that creativity, by that calmness and that being alert. And that is when we are working at our best.
Which is very counterintuitive. In a very complex, serious situation, you're aiming towards calm, playfulness.
Have you seen any of the programs with the SAS? They are in incredible situations, as are any military like that. But if they remain calm, they survive.
Absolutely. So how can neuroscience help business leaders improve the performance of their teams and the organization itself?
I think one of the what people don't realize is that neuroscience is the science of behavior. It's really important that that business leaders understand why their team's doing what they're doing, why they're being obnoxious, why they're being difficult, why they're sabotaging. It's really important why they know why the investors are behaving the way they are. It's really important why as a business leader that they understand people, the human nature better, and why people are doing what they're doing. And neuroscience helps that because it gives you the scientific reasons why. And then when people who are very senior in business, and indeed who might not be so senior, when they realize that science is behind it, they are more inclined to listen and to act upon it. And I think that's really important. For instance, there is people think that senior people think, oh my God, I'm going to make a decision. I'm going to make decisions, bang, 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 bang. Great. Have you communicated it properly? Have you made it clear why you made that decision and where that decision fits in the greater scheme of things? Have you made it clear why you came to that decision and how it's going to benefit the 5-year plan, the 1-year plan, the 10-year plan, whatever? People need to be involved in the whole story to know where they fit. So in actual fact, making a decision is only half the story. We need to actually make a decision that we've enabled people to understand and have communicated it properly. Neuroscience can help that. Neuroscience helps business become far more efficient and effective by enabling the leaders to understand their people.
Yeah, great.
Fantastic. Lynda, I'd love to talk to you a small bit about reverse mentoring. So you talk about how reverse mentoring can be such a powerful tool for obviously both the mentor and the mentee. But would you be able, firstly, just how is it different? How is it different from traditional mentoring? And can you maybe unpack some of the benefits of reverse mentoring, please?
Surely. I mentor senior people. I particularly love mentoring COOs because they need so many skills. They are incredibly skillful bunch and they can spin a lot of plates. I like working with them and I like working with CEOs. That's a one-way mentoring session. So I'm mentoring them on how to handle business relationships and how they're handling communication. That's what I'm doing. If we were reverse mentoring, they would be doing the same for me. So if you're in a business situation and you have got, say, a younger person and an older person in the workforce, and you put them together as reverse mentoring people, they've got to understand what they're doing and why they're doing it so that it's fair. But the benefits are this: the older person with the younger one coming in with their views on technology and what they have been brought up to do, they're sharing with the older person. The older person is sharing things like being more resilient, because they've gone around the block a few times. So they remember when the business went through this particular problem before. So they've learned it and they can therefore be more resilient and know what to do. So they can pass that on. So you're getting this swap of expertise and skills. The benefit of that, of course, is sharing the knowledge. The older person continues to learn vital until the day we take our last breath. You are breaking down intergenerational stereotypes and what we think people are like. That you benefiting the business because all of a sudden these two people are collaborating with one another more, and there is less conflict or less pushback. If somebody has said something a bit quick or a bit off the mark and somebody's taking it the wrong way, a way that it wasn't intended, therefore you are allowing these people to understand each other better on a very much a level playing field, which will benefit the whole business because the whole team will benefit, and therefore the business will benefit. It's huge, a huge amount. So reverse mentoring, I think, is it's a fantastic tool. Yeah, it really is. So I vote for it all the time.
Great. Well, look, I'm going to read another excerpt from your book. One of the problems is not that most of our behavior is below our level of conscious awareness. Most of the time, we don't even know how we have said things or acted. Extract from the brain is boss. Sorry, extract from the brain is boss. That was my extract. So can you elaborate? Typo. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, basically, we are surrounded by a cacophony of stimuli at any one time. We're in bombardment of stimuli at any one time, and we have to choose what we pay attention to. So our attention is very small. It is, by the way, it's not getting smaller. It is just the same as it's always been. But our attention needs to be very small because we need to evaluate situations that we choose to evaluate that needs our attention, needs our conscious processing. All the rest is unconscious processing. Everything else is unconscious processing, which is great, absolutely fine. But we really need to understand anything that's going on below consciousness is great, absolutely fine. Accessing it is good, but may not be necessary to access for many years, but it's sort of bubbling away there. But so what we need to remember, what we need to do is be aware that so much is automatic of our thinking, so much is habitual responses, so much is if you're going into a business meeting and you're meeting Fred over there, you know, as soon as you say XYZ, Fred is going to go ABC before you've even finished your sentence. Yep. Because you've got this unconscious two-way communication going on without you even realizing it, because you think you're consciously paying attention to it, but you're not necessarily, because you're ready for the fight, or you're ready for the response that you're assuming. So he or she or they are going to respond the way that you're expecting. So then you're going to go back to them and respond in the way they're expecting. And you have got this ridiculous conversation going on that's going to go absolutely nowhere. So if you change that automatic response in some way, or if you change the way you speak to that person on the offset, they're going to go, oh. So all of that automatic stuff, we need to access sometimes so that we actually are not in a state of conflict. We're more in a state perceiving or seeing other people's point of view, because they've changed the dialogue, they've changed the automatic response. So yes, there is tons, and I hope I've answered your question properly.
Oh, perfect.
But there is tons going on below conscious awareness, which is fine. But sometimes we need to break it, because in business and indeed our home life, it's not necessarily a good thing all the time.
Yeah, no, I was beaming as your answer, because it speaks to the value we believe the Lego series play method, or any tool that breaks an entrained pattern in that, just to give you context of, like, you would build out a component of your role or a department or a future piece of strategy. And it's different to, like you said, to the stimulus response. You know, George is going to say his typical thing, and Bob is going to, and they're over and back. Whereas when you've broken a habitual pattern, we essentially say we decontextualize you. You're in a room surrounded by thousands of pieces of Lego, which is novel to the brain, consciously and subconsciously, and you're articulating your thoughts in this very novel manner. It changes, it switches your entrained pattern. Mm-hmm. So that's why we would see it as a beneficial tool.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll give you an example. As I mentioned earlier, I've dragged my kids around kicking and screaming around the globe. And at one particular time, we were cycling in China, and my son was a teenager at the time. And teenagers are strong guys, big guys, and I'm 5'3", so I'm the hobbit of the family. So everyone's huge and everything going on. And we stopped for coffee, and all of a sudden, my son said, "Oh, right, I know where the hotel is. I'm going to it." I went, "What?" And so he went on this bike, and he's really fast. He's powerful. I got on mine and I cycled like mad. And I'm shouting, "Michael, Michael," shouting. And finally, he turned around and heard before he really disappeared on the horizon. Because I knew there was a roundabout ahead that must have had 10 exits with no rules, and it was heaving with traffic. And his teenage brain, I was afraid, would not be focusing enough. So I played a double card. I just said, "Michael, I want to go back to the hotel too, but I don't know the way." And he went, "Oh, mother." So he said, "Come with me." And we got to the roundabout. Now he is looking after me, right? He is now the parent. He is looking after me. He said, "Right." And the traffic was like ridiculous. It was, goodness me, it was ridiculous what was going on out there. He said to me, "Okay, I will tell you when to go." Okay, so okay, right, okay. So I was listening. I was going to do exactly what he told me to do, and I'm going like this. Exactly, and I did. He went, "Right, go now," and he went with me, and we went, and we got back safely. Wow. So you by breaking the pattern of parent-child, or co-worker, or whatever, you break in that pattern, you have a totally different perspective, and it makes people think.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, Lynda, wow, fantastic insights from you today. I would just like to finish off with maybe some advice for our listeners. Now, obviously, you work a lot with SMEs. Could you give us some tips for, especially in this post-COVID world, for leaders to be good bosses? Do you have any tips for us today?
Yeah, I do. We have gone through COVID times of such uncertainty, and the brain doesn't do gaps. Okay, it doesn't do gaps. It will fill them in. It will fill them in on any information that it decides to latch onto. So in COVID, we were on the phone to our mates, we were on Zoom, we're looking at the news, anything. We fill in the gaps, and we do all of that stuff. And we start to worry about things that often are not going to happen, because we have taken all of this information from spurious sources which have come to nothing. So it's been highly stressful. We have been isolated, highly stressful. We've been worried for our own health and for the health of our loved ones, highly stressful, worried about our job. We may have lost loved ones to COVID. This has been a really difficult time. And then we went into economic uncertainty, and then we went into conflict in the world, and all of those other things. We are wired for stress. We are like up here. And I think for any kind of business leader, you must remember that. And especially with a younger generation who have missed so much of their schooling or university work, they've been working remotely in the universities. So they have not had the opportunity to build any kind of relationships. And that's the key. It's abundantly clear how badly we need people. From what we've experienced with COVID, and what a massive social experiment. It was huge, and we've got to take those learnings. And it's absolutely 100% clear that we need one another. We need good relationships, and we need to be mindful of people's stress levels, because the change is coming faster and faster and faster and faster. And we need to be mindful of that. So if you're a good boss at the moment, a good boss will be being more like HR used to be when it was, personnel 1,000 years ago. You are actually looking out for your people more. You're noticing a difference, not noticing if they're stressed or if they're depressed or anxious, but noticing a difference in how they normally are. And that's a warning sign. So you need to be aware of that and just look out for them and say, "Hey, you're right. Can I help you in any way?" Something, not delving too deeply. Remember, you're not a pseudopsychologist, but they need to feel that you are there. And it's about It's about relationships, and it's about communication. It's about clearly communicating, involving everybody in business decisions that you can, of course you can't with all of them, but that you can do, and telling people where they fit in. I was working with a senior lawyer a while ago now, and she had a problem because towards the close of business, she wanted somebody to do some photocopying for her. And this junior lawyer said, no, I'm not doing that. I'm a qualified lawyer now. I'm not going to do photocopying. We're like, whoa. Okay, so she had to say, look, my client needs this within half an hour and I need your help. They went, oh, okay. You can't just bark at people, yeah? You've got to tell them why you're asking them, and you actually need their help. That's the way to be a good boss post-COVID, I believe.
And I think as a leader as well, we can't forget that COVID has happened, and we can't expect our staff, just because they're back in the same building as they were pre-COVID, that everything is fine now. And I think that that's so important, that we have to, I know a lot of people don't want to talk about it, but we do have to accept that things will never be as they were. And we have to look for those, those warning signs, I suppose, as well, in your staff, if something is amiss. Definitely.
Yeah. I mean, even towards the end of last year, when I did this module for a university, the students were the dropout rate for students is actually quite high now.
Very high.
Because they've been working remotely. They haven't become a member of a community at university where there was a buffer and you could talk to people and feel resilient about things when they go wrong, because things will go wrong. Yeah. And we need actually to have that feeling that you belong somewhere, you belong to people who you can talk to, so that you actually stay there and keep going.
Yeah. It goes back to the tribe mentality as well, the sense of belonging that Johanny Hari speaks to, so profoundly in his book. And it's so true. It is all about that lost connections, especially as a student in university. It's a very difficult transition from school. And of course, if you've, gone through COVID as a student and you're now starting college, it's very, very scary, because you didn't have a chance to have that big sense of community or form your tribe in school. So yeah, very, very difficult, not only for the workers, but for students.
And these are future leaders. These are the future workforce.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. We need to learn for that.
And that's where, if you are employing somebody now who's a graduate, because they're the ones who have been dropping out, they're the ones who've been suffering as well. If you are employing them, reverse mentoring could help them feel belong. Yeah. It's another thing that ticks the box for reverse mentoring. Help them feel that they're significant enough, because that's an important emotion, significance. If a child needs to feel heard, an elderly person needs to feel heard. How many elderly people do we hear say, I feel invisible? And that's what we need to do with our workforce. So if you've got graduates coming into your company or your firm, you help them by feeling that, yes, they don't know anything that they need to know about the job yet, but they know something that's of value.
Yeah.
Help them feel significant. And it's two-way. The elderly person, all of it, everything, just help people feel that they are part of a thriving community.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I think that's the best way to end.
Yes.
We're going to put that in quotes. That's such a lovely way to wrap up. Lynda, thank you so much for your time. It's been such a wonderful conversation.
And for your wonderful insights and knowledge. I'm like a sponge, just taking it all in, but it's been absolutely fantastic.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.